Oh, welcome back, everyone. And it all went quiet. If there's anyone out still eating and drinking, get in here. Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. All strapped in, ready, refreshed. Yeah, enjoyed the little cakes. Thank you, Marcus. They were very nice, if not a little bit tiny. Or it might just be my hands, I don't know. So in case you've all forgotten, today we're here to celebrate PASMA's 50th anniversary. In case the break had made you, it's important not only to reflect on our rich history, as I've said before, but to look ahead at the future of the tower access industry. So the landscape of our industry is constantly evolving, and staying ahead of these changes is critical to our continued success and safety. Our next presentation, which is a favourite of mine, is from Mr. Don Ayres, PASMA's Technical Director. Don has been instrumental in driving innovation and maintaining the high standards that PASMA is known for. Today, he will be sharing his vision on where the tower access industry may be heading, what past teachings we can perhaps look back on for guidance, and the challenges we may face and the opportunities that lie ahead. So please join me in welcoming Don Ayres to the stage.
Good afternoon. That was audience participation bit, by the way. Good afternoon. Better. I thought we'd have a conversation about the future, because you know I'm into that. About levitating boots and hoverboards and other things. Oh, I'm laughing at myself. And other things that might change the way we think about work at heights. But before we talk about the future, let's go back a bit, quite a long way back, more than 50 years, more than 100 years, more than 1,000 years. Because recognizing the need to work at height safely is nothing new. In fact, and this may surprise you, it's a requirement of the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. It's in there. You have to read between the stuff. Deuteronomy chapter 22.8. When you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof so that you will not bring blood guilt if anyone falls from it. It's there in the Bible. Edge protection. Around 700 years BC, Moses, the great lawgiver of Israel, wrote this, and not having a spare tablet to add it as an amendment to the Big Ten, he put it in Deuteronomy. Who are we to question Moses, the great lawgiver of Israel, and his handy prompt for the installation of edge protection on new builds? Revelations 2.5. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent and do the works you did at first. Clearly, it's John the Elder, an early health and safety consultant, talking about the importance of planning for work from heights. Otherwise, you could be in for a fall. John goes on to say, if not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. Lampstand from its place? So failure to plan and not repenting will result in impalement on your own lampstand. Back then they didn't muck about with fees for intervention. Forget your planning and it's the lampstand for you, matey. And they even used your own lampstand. As part of his consulting fee, John offered surgical assistance in the removal of said lampstand from its place, which he possibly quite enjoyed. Next is Isaiah chapter 24. Whoever flees at the sound of terror will fall into a pit. Whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. Obviously, this is recognizing that work below ground can also be work at height. we're talking pits. They had a lot of pits in the Bible. Fire pits, pits of burning oil, pits of hell, all rather nasty and not to be fallen into. Because if you did, then if you get out, you'll be caught in a snare. And that's possibly John slipping on his rubber gloves and looking for a bit more surgical assistance. But the Bible doesn't stop there. Matthew, Regulation 15. And if a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit without any question. It's the first nod for training. If a blind man follows a blind man, both will fall into a pit. 2 Kings. And Ahaziah, I've been practicing that for weeks. Ahaziah fell through the lattice in his upper chamber, which was in Samaria, and became ill. I love the detail. It was in Samaria. And the local Samarian Gazette shows him plunging to his early demise from a 3rd-floor window. Didn't Ahaziah know about fragile surfaces, Samarian lattices? Look what happened. Acts 20. And there was a young man named Eutychus. Eutychus, sitting on the windowsill, sinking into a deep sleep. This is in the Bible. Sinking into a deep sleep. And as Paul kept on talking, he was overcome by sleep and fell down from the 3rd floor and was picked up dead. Look what happened to Eutychus. Paul's rattling on about biblical stuff, a bit like me, and young Eutychus sitting in the window without any collective personal fall protection and possibly already having a few too many from the nearby Holy Grail, nods off and crash. 3 fours later and he's brown bread. And Paul's speech is completely ruined, much like mine. Matthew's message was very obvious. Don't work at height if you're not fit, and take adequate measures to prevent or mitigate the circumstances of a fall. What's all this got to do with towers, I hear you say? No, it's okay. It's like the Manchester Frog and Bucket. Not long after Moses, the Romans started HP2. That's Hasta Pompeii 2. It was a major infrastructure project, an attempt to win votes by the young emperor Honorius. Hasta Pompeii, otherwise known as Asti, was located in Piedmont in Italy, and after a bit of a rude bashing by the Visigoths in 400 BC, it needed a facelift. This picture, painted by a member of the Piedmont paparazzi, shows loads of towers with guardrails. Was this the result of respect for the health and safety laws of Rome and Roman workers? Or was it the biblical threats of empowerment on a lampstand that made them fit the side protection? Does the Bible actually contain the first version of the work at height regulations? Is this actually a picture of Hasta Pompeii 2? Would I make this stuff up just for the purpose of keeping your attention? About 1,000 or so years later, and there's a new king on the block, and he and his mates in tights decided to build a new weekend retreat. Hand-carved Portland stone, views across the city, close to the church, a highly desirable medieval residence, but not a sign of side protection on that tower. No guardrails. Over in the church next door, the bishop is frantically praying and hoping like mad that the little chap with the hammer doesn't step back and catch a cropper. Because if he does, It's a pointy lampstand in hell for all the clergy who are involved in the risk assessment. So how are we doing on the work at height front? Bible says side protection. Romans thought it was a good idea. Well done, Romans. Early medieval kings, on the other hand, had big beards. They didn't care much about health and safety, and blood guilt. Falls from flat roofs, stepping into pits, crashing through fragile Sumerian lattices, or falling out of an unprotected window. They didn't give it a thought. But they had no idea what was coming at the pearly gates. Leap forward to 1947. Who said, thank God? Wally Johnson in the good old US of A. Wally patents a scaffold of the portable type. It has built-in ladder frames. It has an improved manner of bracing and a locking mechanism which cannot be released inadvertently. Woo-woo for Wally, but he was looking to the future. Okay, the guardrails are a bit, well, Roman by today's standards, but at least it had some. But 9 people on the same tower possibly goes a bit against the EN 1004-1, because now we have double guardrails all round, with tow boards, trapdoor platforms, and advanced guardrail systems. Things are much safer. Wally Johnson was looking to the future. For those of you that were at our conference last year, Mr. Howard and Milk Boy are back. If you were here, you'll remember, if you didn't partake too much of the Holy Grail, that we talked about the importance of looking to the future and adapting to change. We talked about Mr. Howard the milkman and his rather squeaky and slow handcart, which was propelled by his trusty sidekick, Milk Boy. Unfortunately, they forgot to look to the future. Mr. Howard was sure that in years to come, Milk Boy, if he kept on pushing that cart, would end up being a milkman. In 1900, they thought this science fiction talk in the Milkman's Gazette about using horse-drawn milk carts was just plain ridiculous. In what world would that ever happen? But although Mr. Howard and Milk Boy didn't look to their future, their customers did. Milk in Motion, an analysis of the logistical system for the delivery of milk, available in W.H. Smith's, tells us that the horse-drawn, I've got a copy, tells us that the horse-drawn milk float had become the predominant method of milk delivery by 1920. So that's just 20 years later. When did the electric milk float first appear? Close. 1932. It was called the electric pony. Quite apt, really. Just another 12 years later. And then customers went on to the new supermarkets. They got their own milk and it was cheaper and they could keep it at home in a new thing called a fridge. So by 1972, 5% of milk was delivered by daily deliveries. And now customers have a new option. It's called Nuro. Again, we touched on this at the last conference. People can have their milk delivered once, well, milk, groceries, any fresh food delivered once, twice, 2, 3 times a day by an autonomous fresh food delivery vehicle. In the States, it's growing month on month. You will not be surprised to know there's even an app for it. Mr. Howard and Milk Boy didn't see Nuro coming. They never gave it a thought to the fact that one day delivering the milk from rusty tins on a handcart wasn't going to cut it. If you're interested in watching the entire story of Mr. Howard and Milk Boy, yeah, I thought you would be, you can get a copy of my DVD from the PASMA desk as you leave, except that DVDs don't work anymore, do they? To my knowledge, and since last year's conference, they've still not perfected levitating boots or hoverboards. Apart from the technical issues, why would you put a person up there working at height? Remember what it says in the work at height regs. Every employer shall ensure that work is not carried out at height where it is reasonably practical to carry out the work safely otherwise than at height. Of course, there are ways to reduce work at height. This is a modular prefabricated house. It's assembled on site in one day. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, constructed in 4 modules with a pre-tiled roof. It's prefabricated in a factory where the work at height is significantly reduced, and any that remains is carried out under very controlled conditions using safer work at height methods. Compare this to a conventional building on site where it can take 4 to 6 months, involve a significant amount of work at height, tea, biscuits, visit to Greggs and McDonald's, and finishing early on Fridays. But what if the future is not just about reducing work at height? What if we're talking about eliminating work at height? We've been talking about the use of drones for a while now. In just a few years, drones have developed far beyond possibly our original thoughts. They're not only being used just for inspections, they are already painters. They're already crop sprayers. They're already window cleaners. And they're already sky cranes. And how about hundreds of little drones 3D printing an entire building? They've just built one in America. 3D printing has been around for a while now. It's done. It's not science fiction. It's here. And they're working on hundreds of little drones, all working together to 3D print a whole building. And I do mean the whole building. The outside, here. The inside, the roof, the wiring, the pipes, the kitchen sink, the furniture. That's silly, says Mr. Howard. You could not get hundreds of little drones all working together, could you? That's hundreds of little drones all working together. Solar panels, it's a hot topic. We're getting lots of questions every day. And if they carry on working at height like this, we could be in for a problem. Solar panel installations will treble in the next 3 years. If they carry on doing it like this, there's a fair chance that falls from height will also treble. Of course, you could build a prefabricated modular house with a solar roof pre-installed, but what about existing buildings? What about those existing structures? This is an automated solar panel installation machine. It's already in widespread use for constructing solar farms. But how long before it can install a solar panel on your roof? No work at height required. You might have thought it was a MUPE, a mobile elevating work platform, but it's missing one thing. A platform. You don't need a platform if there's no one up there. Maybe it's a Muse, a mobile elevating work system. It's a robot arm on wheels, and the robot can change what's on the end of the arm itself. We already have robot bricklayers. We already have robot roofers. And we already have robot tilers. And of course, all of this information, all of this automation doesn't have the advantage of human vision, the manual dexterity of a human, the versatility of human movement, does it?
I forgot my tools again.
By the way, this is a real robot. This isn't computer graphics. This is a real robot.
Such a show off.
Whilst I'm not condoning the somewhat questionable health and safety practices of Atlas and his human scaffolding partner, it illustrates the point that humanoid robotics are moving literally at an amazing speed. Atlas has AI-assisted vision. That means he could identify all the parts of a tower and check if they're in good condition. He can faultlessly remember where all the parts go and recognize if there are any missing. The advantage of Atlas over single-purpose robots like robot bricklayers is that, just like us, he's very versatile. Unlike single-purpose robots, Atlas could be milking the cow, building a BS 1139-6 complex tower, and next day cooking you dinner, as long as he washes. Mobile towers are a good way of getting Atlas where Atlas needs to be. Or you might think you have this great idea, and we could add the levitating boots to Atlas. Except that's already sorted, because Atlas can fly like any other drone. So does all this mean that mobile towers and other work at height equipment will become a thing of the past? If anyone would like to talk seriously about this, don't ask me. Just go to the main hotel doors, buy my DVD as you exit, turn left, go into the first pub, and after a few hours, all of this may become clear. Or you can stay there and have a great time this evening. I wouldn't be too scared. Not yet, maybe in the future. But tomorrow's the future. Is that the sound of a horse, milk horse's hooves approaching, or the buzz of an approaching Atlas robot? Just remember, and it's written in the Bible, there is one thing you should be scared of. Pointy lampstands. Thank you for listening.